killing is done for one reason, and one reason alone: survival. It's widely accepted that in animals, this is a genetically programmed behavior, not an act of premeditation. Yet in this disturbing footage, a gang of chimpanzees attacks a member of their own community, though he is neither threat nor source of food. The behavior triggers a profound question. What were they thinking? And was it impulse or a plan? Animals in captivity can appear to attack, yet even some of the most powerful predators demonstrate inexplicable restraint.
Could have literally snapped that girl's leg off, but instead decided to almost act like a play behavior.
Complex and unpredictable, it may be that animals are capable of all kinds of thinking.
Color bigger?
The brains of the natural world present a multitude of mysteries. But scientists have forged new methods for peering into the animal mind, forcing them to reconsider everything they believed about animal thinking. Animals can be wildly unpredictable, as this theme park employee is about to find out. At 9 tons and 25 feet, orcas are powerful predators that can kill an 800-pound sea lion. So when Shamu throws the rider off its back and begins dragging her around, she is in deadly jeopardy. The terrified rider is hauled onto the pool's edge, but the whale refuses to let go. With the woman's leg in the jaws of death, it's a tense standoff, until a trainer pries the killer whale's mouth open and the woman escapes. It appears to be a miracle that she survived with only minor wounds and bruises. But take another look. This is no mindless attack.
That whale could have easily killed that girl. What's amazing is that he didn't. It was some kind of decision, some kind of thinking was going on.
So can animals really think?
Most animals are cognitive. It means they can think. The question is, how do they think?
No one claims that animals can imagine, create, and think on the same scale as humans. But many experts are coming to believe that we have underestimated the capacity of the animal mind. Scientists have made dramatic progress by dividing the question of what animals think into testable segments. They have discovered essential traits of thinking: choice, self-awareness, tool use, deception, organized aggression, and language. Many believe that language is the single most important trait that separates humans from other animals. Most animals, even chimpanzees, can only make the sounds they were born with. Yet a select few, including whales, learn their calls in the same way as humans learn language.
But a whale, just like a human, has to hear sounds during their early development, and as they're growing, a baby whale needs to be exposed to it in order to learn it.
This special capacity is called vocal learning.
Vocal learning really enables a far more sophisticated communication system. So it kind of opens the doors to the development of sounds that, that may be highly specialized for certain purposes.
For killer whales, one of the most important purposes may be sex. That is, finding a good mate.
We think that it may be a mechanism to prevent inbreeding, so that mating partners are chosen based on their dialect. So a male that might go off to a different group would be attracted to a female that has a different accent, if you like.
It's possible their search is aided by a tiny but powerful component of their giant brain, that few other animals possess. A killer whale's brain weighs about 12 pounds. It is nearly 4 times the weight of a human brain. The average whale has 200 billion neurons in its brain, twice as many as a human. In the human brain, there is a highly specialized processor known as the von Economo neuron, or spindle cell. Spindle cells are considered the air traffic controllers of the mind, speeding information around the head much more quickly than other cells.
We're talking about the quickest message system you could possibly think of. There's a difference between using paper cups to communicate versus the high-speed internet.
They are found in parts of the brain believed to be responsible for speech, intuition, and some of our most profound feelings, love and suffering. In the year 2006, researchers discovered spindle cells in the brains of killer whales.
So what does that tell us about killer whales? Can they fall in love? Can they feel guilty?
Spindle cells are a strong indication of an ability for advanced thinking, but science simply doesn't yet know the true function of these cells in whales.
Big mystery, but exciting stuff.
Despite being evolutionary cousins to humans, great apes and monkeys have almost no capacity for language and can only make innate sounds. But in a preliminary study, Mark Hauser and psycholinguist Ansgar Endres have dramatic evidence suggesting that monkeys may understand symbols, a critical precursor of language. They used photographs in the experiment because of a striking fact about human development. Babies can't tell the difference between a photo and a real object until they're almost 2 years old.
In fact, an 18-month-old child shown a picture of a shoe try to put their feet into the shoe. So that shows they don't understand what it stands for.
The experiment was conducted on a small island off the coast of Puerto Rico, known as Cayo Santiago. It's part of the Caribbean Primate Research Center and home to about 1,000 rhesus monkeys that freely range around the island. Although the brain of a rhesus is much smaller than a human's, its structure is relatively similar. The brain of a rhesus monkey weighs less than 1/4 pound. That is 1/15 the weight of a human brain. 93% of their DNA is the same as a human's. In a series of tests, a researcher simply showed the monkeys 2 empty buckets, each with a photo on the front.
We place them down, we walk away. That's it. Which one do they approach?
In the first test, one bucket has a photo of an apple, the other a pair of pliers. Well over 90% of the monkeys approach the bucket with the photo of the fruit.
Most of the animals don't touch the picture, the way the child will often try to grab the shoe or grab the rattle out of the picture. They just look in the bucket, suggesting that the picture is a cue that there might be apples there.
In a second test, with the bucket still empty, the researcher gives them a choice between photos of 1½ apples and a half of an apple. They knew from number studies that monkeys prefer more, and they expected them to go to the bucket with the photo of an apple and a half.
And they do.
Then comes the big test. The researchers pit the photo of an apple and a half against a small piece of actual fruit placed on the outside of the bucket.
Now we're going to show them a picture of 1½ apples, so a whole apple and a half an apple. And on this bucket, 1/8 of a real apple, the real thing.
If the monkeys fail to understand that the photo is merely a symbol, they will approach the bucket with the photo because it clearly represents more apple.
But they go to the real apple. So they can distinguish between real and picture.
Hauser sees this as evidence that monkeys may have a hidden capacity to understand symbols, a level of thinking that could be a vital precursor to language.
It suggests that the animals have a certain kind of representation, a certain kind of way of thinking, which is in some sense abstract, again providing possibly a building block to the construction of language.
It is possible that an adult monkey has a better understanding of symbol than a human baby. And it raises profound questions about the evolution of speech.
Primates, even killer whales, they're demonstrating some capabilities that are looking more and more like what we consider to be language. It looks like there's a lot more going on than what we might have thought.
But other types of thinking can reveal astonishing capacities, even with the most primordial creatures. The brain, it's the body's most powerful organ. It can instantly process torrents of data, intense emotion, and distant memories. It solves complex problems and triggers split-second responses that are sometimes a matter of life and death. Yet this is just the start of what scientists know about animal brains. What's surprising is how capable the brain is, even in an animal with a tiny one. A bee's brain is only the size of a pencil point and weighs 1 milligram. There are 850,000 neurons in their brains, about 100,000 times fewer than humans. Yet they are the only species besides humans that can communicate the precise direction, distance, and quality of a food source to others.
You don't really think of insects as a thinking creature, but bees, they're kind of giving science a run for their money.
Until recently, scientists believed that bees were incapable of thought. They were simply hardwired to locate their food.
The biologist Jim Gould did a beautiful little experiment.
Gould took a few bees out of a hive and trained them to find pollen on a boat at the shoreline. He gradually moved the boat farther from the shore until it was in the middle of the lake.
He lets the bees come back to the hive. The bees say, guys, fantastic food over here. No one goes. The middle of the lake is an implausible place. If they were simply reflexive, they should have gone. But they're able to say no.
Many researchers believe this experiment revealed a hidden property of the animal mind, the ability to create a map of their world and make a deliberate choice based on that. It's an essential trait of thinking.
And this, in some sense, is beautiful evidence of the flexibility of animal behavior, even with something like a bee with a very, very simple nervous system.
For a tiny animal, there is something what you'd call thought probably going on.
If a creature with a brain as small as a bee's is capable of choice, then can a bigger animal, such as a dog, make decisions like a judge?
We think of dogs as probably a pretty intelligent animal, but are they really thinkers?
Well, according to evolutionary biologist Mark Bekoff, yes. He believes that dogs do some of their most profound thinking while at play.
Play is just the arena for studying animal cognition, animal thinking, animal feeling.
It's where the brains of canines get creative. A 25-pound dog has a 2.5-ounce brain. That is 1/20th the weight of a human brain. There are 160 million neurons in a dog's brain, compared to 100 billion in a human's.
Dog play is totally unpredictable. Whereas like the secrets of mating behavior or predatory behavior or aggressive behavior would be very predictable, play is really highly variable.
During play, dogs adjust their responses moment by moment in a stream of spontaneous decision-making that Bekoff considers thinking.
When I talk about nuancing play and the fine-tuning, it really, really strongly reeks, if you will, of an argument for intelligence and cognition.
Bekoff sees proof in disarmingly simple behaviors, like a critical signal he calls play bow.
Play bow is when a dog or a wolf or another animal crouches on the forelimbs, puts their butt up in the air, wags their tail, and sometimes barks. So it's a bow, it's an invitation to play.
It signals that what's to follow is just for fun, even though it will involve all the predatory behaviors of an attack.
Like a bite with a head shake, you know, where the animal bites and goes "Rrr," and shakes from side to side.
In cases where play becomes too rough, the play bow is used again with a new meaning.
They'll use it to apologize. They'll often do it right after a bite, a hard bite, and say, "I'm sorry I bit you. Please forgive me."
It's part of the reason why Beckhoff maintains that dogs have a sense of justice and even morality.
Dogs can tell right from wrong. They know it's wrong to bite another animal hard. It's wrong to invite another animal to play and then try to mate with them or beat the hell out of them. And if they don't do what's right in order to maintain play, then play stops.
Not everyone agrees. Psychologist Clive Wynne believes dogs are not as smart as their wild ancestors, the wolves. One rough indication is brain size.
It's a fact that the brain of an adult dog, yes, sweetie, is seldom more than a third of the size of a brain of an adult wolf.
When it comes to what we think of thinking, I think the wolf has the advantage. They have to think on their feet to survive. Dogs, they've kind of had a little cushier.
Nevertheless, experts argue that dogs have a special capacity to understand, often citing this extraordinary statement. Of the entire animal kingdom, only dogs seem to comprehend that the gesture of a human pointing means that direction. So Wynne developed a simple experiment and journeyed to Wolf Park, Indiana, where he could test both wolves and dogs on their response to a human pointing.
Pogo!
As expected, dogs usually went towards the point. But when he ran the same test with the wolves...
Okay, Wolfgang, Wolfgang.
They also went towards the point, shattering the belief that only dogs could do this. Why? Wolves at the park have been raised by humans since birth, much like pet dogs. And according to Wynne, it's this close experience with people that gives animals the ability to understand a point. Wynne concluded that dogs don't have any special intelligence. They only respond because of conditioning, which is considered reflexive behavior, not thinking. But it may not be that simple.
But what makes dogs a little more unique? They want affection, they want attention. They want that emotional bond with a human. And I think that shows a little bit more brain power than just an eating machine.
Nevertheless, Wynne argues that animal thinking is really just a result of biological programming, even for humans.
Humans think, but we're thinking machines. It's a product of our biological machinery that we have this ability to think in the ways that we do.
Mark Beckhoff agrees about the similarity between humans and other animals, but he comes to a very different conclusion.
So a lot of people argue that we are unique in being pre-programmed to think, but it had to come from somewhere, and where it comes from is other animals. If we have emotions, so do they. If we can think, so can they. It's totally bad biology to argue otherwise.
Bees and dogs may be demonstrating a fundamental trait of thought in their capacity to make deliberate choices. There is another essential trait of thinking that humans possess: self-consciousness. Now, new experiments show that a surprising array of animals may also be self-aware. Of the wildly diverse animals that dwell in ocean waters, the smartest may well be dolphins. The state-of-the-art habitat at the National Aquarium in Baltimore is the perfect place to witness their highly sophisticated behavior.
Dolphins have large and complex brains. They're certainly processing information at a very high level.
Psychologist Diana Reese has been working with dolphins for 30 years. Her research has sought to answer an eternal question about animal thinking. Are they aware of themselves? Reese has discovered that one window into the dolphin mind is a mirror.
So we're just going to be putting this mirror against the wall and looking at their reaction today.
Immediately, dolphins begin stationing themselves in front of the mirror.
Both animals are extremely close to the mirror. This is really interesting.
The dolphins are clearly seeing something, but that doesn't mean they are recognizing themselves.
Mirror self-recognition is a rare ability. It's only been seen in a few species.
Obviously, there's no mirrors in the ocean. So why does a dolphin need to self-recognize? You know, does it have to check his lipstick? Does it have to see if it has a piece of salmon in his mouth? Really what it comes down to is that these animals are social animals. The more social you are, the more intelligent you are. And the more social you are, the more self-aware you need to be.
This can be a critical edge for animals that have to navigate hierarchies, alliances, and the social standing of a potential mate.
Animals that have to process complicated information about others in their environment. They have to remember specific individuals and remember what they did with those individuals.
For years, scientists believed that only humans could recognize themselves in a mirror. Then in 1970, Gordon Gallup developed a series of mirror experiments for chimpanzees and came to the conclusion that they were also able to recognize themselves.
He was the first to show that we weren't alone in this ability. We shared this with the chimpanzees.
Spurred by the way dolphins reacted to their own reflection, Reese designed a mirror experiment for dolphins much like the one for chimpanzees. What she found was that dolphins not only seemed to recognize themselves, they went through 3 stages that were strikingly similar to chimpanzees and humans.
What we're seeing here is an image of the first reactions of dolphins to a mirror.
This earlier footage of formal tests showed dolphins in the first stage, reacting as if the animal in the mirror is another dolphin.
You'll often see a dolphin act like it's looking at another of its own species.
In the second stage, they show something called contingency testing. They'll move back and forth, side to side, as if testing to see if the animal in the mirror does the same things they do.
That seems to be a very critical time when the animals are collecting information as to what happens with that reflected image, with that critter, when they're doing certain behaviors. That's when they're figuring it out, I think.
The final stage is when they look at parts of their bodies they can't see without a mirror. At this point, Reese did an experiment called a mark test.
We mark them in different parts of their body they can't see, and the test is, will they race to the mirror, orient that part of their body that's marked immediately to the mirror? And that's exactly what they did. And now he starts doing neck stretches, exposing the marked part of his body immediately to the mirror. This is sort of a more objective means of saying this animal really knows that it's a mirror and it's itself, and it can use it as a tool to see something on its body or to see itself.
The dolphins at the National Aquarium respond to a mirror as if they were also recognizing themselves. It is further proof that these animals possess this essential trait of thought.
These animals have brains to be reckoned with. These are thinking species, and I think we're just scratching the iceberg about what they're capable of doing.
The list of animals that recognize themselves in a mirror is rapidly growing. Diana Reese teamed with primatologist Franz Duval to find that elephants have the capacity. In 2008, researchers discovered that ordinary magpies also had the ability. Still, the mirror test raises as many questions as it answers.
Why does a great ape show mirror self-recognition and no monkey's ever been able to show it? Why do dolphins show it and sea lions don't? We're going to have to get into more studies understanding the neuroanatomy of these animals and look at what other behaviors go hand in hand with it.
Further experiments may reveal new insight into the mysteries of animal self-perception. From the lowly pencil to the most complex technology, tools are one of the most powerful extensions of mankind's ability. Sparked by imagination, honed by reason, the use of tools is an essential trait of thinking. And it was long believed that only humans had the genius to conceive of tools. But that was shattered in 1960, when an untrained anthropologist by the name of Jane Goodall found chimpanzees using sticks to fish out termites.
Anytime you look at tool use, it definitely demonstrates some advanced thinking because basically what it is problem solving.
Of the many animals using tools, one of the most capable was also considered the most unlikely, the New Caledonian crow. The brain of a New Caledonian crow weighs just 1/4 of an ounce. That is 2.5% of its total weight, exactly the same percentage as the human brain. New Caledonian crows use tools with about the same sophistication as chimpanzees, although scientists don't yet understand why these crows are so much more capable than other birds and animals. Without thumbs or even arms, no one expected a New Caledonian crow to use tools. But much like the chimpanzee, these birds use sticks and leaves in the wild to fish out insects.
We're talking about an animal that has only a beak to work with, and they're able to perform something as easily, if not better, than even an advanced primate.
Yet what amazed researchers Gavin Hunt and Russell Gray was that the crows didn't just use tools, they created them. They saw the birds choose a stick, strip the leaves, and use it to fish out food. The crows also showed an ability to carry a tool with them, to choose a more effective tool, and to hold the twig on a preferred side of the beak, much like left or right-handedness in humans.
What's fascinating to me is New Caledonian crows make complex tools, and they're more complex than chimpanzees.
Crows are not the only creatures without hands that are devising tools. Dolphins have actually made their own toys.
They can create these absolutely beautiful rings. They look like silver rings. They're made out of air that they're exhaling. She's blowing one bubble ring, then a second bubble ring, and then when it becomes a hoop, she swims through it, creating her own object.
Tool use demonstrates an essential trait of thinking. Of course, no animal is as inventive with tools as humans.
Once modern humans kind of came onto the scene 50,000 years ago, the brain changed in a massively fundamental way to make it incredibly powerful to just imagine all sorts of possible tool technologies. And now what you have is what people have often referred to as ratcheting effect, where the historical background of pencil, computer, whatever else is next, just keep building by combining different pieces to create new things.
One of these new things is numbers, but humans are not the only animal using them.
What can an animal possibly use math for? How many predators are potentially out there? If you're a scavenger, how many competitors are you going to have? And how that applies makes them more successful in the wild.
Good boy. Good parent. Okay.
Having found that Alex, the African gray parrot, could understand language, psychologist Irene Pepperberg discovered that he could also do math.
When I first started this work in the 70s, my first grant proposal came back essentially asking me what I was smoking, because nobody believed that a bird could do the kinds of things that I was proposing to test.
He demonstrated dazzling capacities that included the concept of numbers.
What kind of number smaller? Good birdie. Good parrot.
They certainly didn't think he could understand complex concepts, things like same and different, bigger, smaller, concepts of number. Everybody thought that was way, way beyond these birds' abilities.
It was Alex's unruly nature while she was working with a parrot named Griffin that led to the startling realization of his math ability.
We were doing some work with the younger birds, sequential sounds, and so I was clicking. How many? So I clicked twice. Griffin didn't want to answer, so I repeated. I went, listen, Griffin, how many? And Alex says 4, and I tell him to be quiet because I clicked twice. And I go, Griffin, listen, how many? And Alex says 6. All of a sudden I realized Alex was doing something much more complicated than just responding to, say, a series of clicks. He was actually adding them up. So we started a whole project on addition.
Pepperberg indeed proved that Alex could add.
Why would a bird want to add? The answer? No one really knows yet, but I just think it's another example of how we underestimate animals' abilities.
Tragically, her work with Alex ended in the year 2007. when he died suddenly of a heart arrhythmia.
Alex was not, just a laboratory bird. I mean, he was my colleague for 30 years. And it was like losing a child, a colleague, and a significant other sort of all rolled into one.
Pepperberg continues to work with 2 other parrots on language and problem solving, in part to show that Alex was not a uniquely brilliant bird. And she finds enormous satisfaction in the fact that with numbers and language, she gave Alex the ability to reveal some of the richness within his mind. The New York Stock Exchange. This frenzied epicenter of big business embodies one of humanity's most sophisticated notions: an economy. Yet when psychologist Laurie Santos looks at the stock market, she wonders what other animals might share our ability to use money.
We're, of course, the only species that actually uses a fiat currency on a daily basis to buy goods. Fiat currency just meaning money, but nobody really has looked at the roots of this in other species.
It turns out that primates may already have an economy based on grooming.
Many researchers are interested in grooming in part because it might be kind of one of the origins of our human economic exchange. The term, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours later, it might have much older origins than we would have thought before.
Santos wanted to know if monkeys had the capacity to go to the next level.
What if we gave them a currency that they could use? Could they figure it out? Would they behave rationally, smartly with money in the same ways that humans do?
So she minted some monkey tokens.
And we taught them that they could hand a token to a human experimenter to get a piece of food.
Then the monkeys were offered choices that simulated bargains, such as 2 for the price of 1, just like a regular market. The results were stunning.
Monkeys are remarkably similar to humans. One way in which they're similar is that they seem to be rational. So when apples go on sale, they actually buy more apples, just like humans do.
The thinking that has produced some of the world's biggest markets may have evolutionary roots in animals that go back millions of years. There is yet another way that the thinking of monkeys may hold clues to the evolution of humans: their ability to deceive. Yet the practice of scheming requires a surprisingly sophisticated level of thought. Namely, the ability to consider what's going on in someone else's head.
We really need it to do the kind of cheating and deceptive things that we do as humans. If you want to sneak around behind somebody's back, you have to know something about what that person sees, what they know, what they intend for you to do or to not do.
Animal researchers call this ability theory of mind. It's a powerful trait of thinking, but incredibly difficult for scientists to test.
It involves thinking about something that you can't actually observe. So animals can learn things about the things they can directly see, but we're wondering if they can think about something they can't see, namely something that's going on inside someone's head.
So Santos and her colleague, Jonathan Flombaum, designed an experiment to see if the monkeys of Cayo Santiago could be deceptive like humans.
We kind of came to it accidentally, in part because the monkeys were really good at stealing from us. So John and I were down there doing another set of experiments that involved lemon, and as soon as we'd look down to write something in our notebook, and we'd look up and all of our lemons would be gone.
So what happens in this experiment is James and I each show the monkey a grape just like this, and then we affix it to these boards. We step to the side, we put them down, and then I turn around.
The question was, would monkeys be more likely to take a researcher's grape because they understood that he was not watching it?
Even on the first trial, the monkeys seemed to realize that they had to steal from someone who was looking away.
This was true no matter which researcher was looking away and which one at the grape.
So clever thieves, but clever thieves that are actually paying attention to something that we didn't know they could, namely our thoughts and perceptions and knowledge.
The ability to deceive can have enormous benefits in the wild.
pretend that you are a monkey. You're there, you have scarce resources, you're stuck in this dominance hierarchy where people are above you and are sort of monitoring what you do. If you really want to get access to good food and to good mates, you have to be very careful about what other animals see you doing.
New studies have found that chimpanzees, birds, and other animals also have this cunning skill.
Seems to be a capacity that's shared pretty broadly across the animal kingdom.
In the wild, where sheer survival is paramount, the ability to deceive can be the difference between life and death. It demonstrates that deception is a vital trait of animal thinking. But animals may also behave in ways that demonstrate the darkest and most shocking kind of thought: organized violence. Of all the behaviors in the animal world that demonstrate thinking, most are considered positive. But as humans have shown, some of the most sophisticated thinking can result in devastating violence. This may also be the case in the wild, where chimpanzees can band together in deadly attacks on their fellow primates.
They definitely have the ability and the potential to be extremely violent and use some military tactics.
The question is, are these attacks organized and a result of animal thinking?
The decision to retreat or attack must be conscious. The fascinating question is, are individual chimpanzees aware that the other chimpanzees are making the same decision?
Anthropologist David Watts has spent the last 13 years filming and observing primates at Ngogo in the wilds of Kabale National Park, Uganda.
The community there turns out to be by far the largest that anyone has found in the wild, with now over 150 chimpanzees.
It's well known that chimpanzees have one of the highest capacities for thinking among animals. Their complex social alliances and strategizing show a very sophisticated level of thought. Chimpanzee communities are led by an alpha male. Males vie for dominance and form complicated, frequently changing alliances in order to move up the hierarchy.
Many, if not all of them, put a lot of effort into trying to achieve the highest status that they can.
Like many animals, chimpanzees are fiercely territorial. Males will actively conduct patrols to enforce their boundaries.
Normally, male chimpanzees are noisy. When they're patrolling, they're silent. They often go in a file, and sometimes they stop and sit silently and intently listen. And if they get any sign of other chimpanzee, they get excited, but they still don't make noise.
Chimpanzees can inflict extreme violence on a member of an outside community, but an attack on an adult member of the same community is so unheard of that anthropologists only had one on record. Which is why Watts' footage of this extraordinary assault raises so many questions. Hearing screams, Watts caught up to an attack in progress. A gang of males pummeling a fellow community member whom researchers called Grappelli. The following incident is graphic.
Several males immobilized him, and others were biting him, kicking him, hitting him.
At one point, the chimpanzees pause, and it seems they might let Grappelli go.
Another adult male was literally holding his arm and had the opportunity to let go, but instead he deliberately turned and bit Grappelli, and they resumed the attack.
The assault continues for several more minutes before Grappelli escapes into a tree. Now another male chimp known as Hare, who has only been watching, takes extraordinary action.
Hare climbed up a tree next to him, got very close, and stayed there. A couple of other males who had been involved in the attack started to climb up towards Grappelli, and Hare defended him.
Hare is not a close ally of Grappelli's, but he is a high-ranking male, important to the chimpanzee community.
I could imagine that Hare was thinking this should not be happening. He might even have wanted to intervene and try to stop the attack, but I think that would have been too dangerous.
More than 30 minutes pass before Grappelli finally descends. He begins limping away from the community towards isolation.
Except that Hare went with him. Again, quite remarkable. As if he was interested, he was concerned. And I think there was empathy between Hare and Grappelli.
Grappelli was mortally wounded, and 3 days later, he would be found dead. Watts isn't sure if the attack was spontaneous or chillingly calculated, but he saw one clue in the character of Grappelli.
Grappelli seemed to have the wrong combination of personality skills. That is, ambitious, a rival to some of these males, but not doing a good job of cultivating any of them as allies. I think that they might simply have gotten rid of a rival.
Perhaps another clue lies in the chronic violence of a close relative to these primates, humans.
One of the other mammals in which groups of males cooperatively engage in attacks on members of other groups is humans. And what chimpanzee males do looks rather disturbingly like that kind of behavior in our own species.
Yet the behavior of Hare suggests astonishing levels of empathy and an awareness that the community had lost its moral compass.
I think that Hare certainly was doing a lot of complex social reading of the situation. He certainly acted as if he thought that was wrong, it should not have happened at all, and I'm not going to allow it to resume. I'm not going to allow anyone to do more.
Hare shows that while chimpanzees may possess the terrible ability to coordinate group attacks, they may also have the capacity to empathize and comfort, very much like their human counterparts. The science of what animals think is in many ways just beginning. Fresh techniques are unlocking the mysteries of the animal brain and finding persuasive evidence that they possess many essential traits of thinking.
The field's moving at a very, very fast pace because now new methods are beginning to come in that are really changing how people begin to approach animal cognition, how they begin to investigate it.
Science will continue to hotly debate what animals think and pursue it with a passion.
Understanding how animals think will open up whole new worlds right here on our own planet.
But with the surge of new discoveries, one future seems likely. They will also continue to find that humans have underestimated the capacity of wild minds.
If we've learned anything recently, it's that we never know as much as we think we know.